Good morning. Thank you everyone for joining us today for this important conversation about how New York can support high school seniors as they graduate during this unprecedented pandemic. My name is Ian Rosenblum, and I'm the Executive Director of the Education-Trust-New York, a nonprofit policy and advocacy organization committed to educational equity. We know that even in so-called normal times, students of color and students from low-income backgrounds are underrepresented in college pathways. School closures have interrupted the senior year of roughly 190,000 students, about half of whom are from low-income backgrounds and including more than 100,000 students of color. Our education system had stark inequities and disparities before the pandemic, including in access to advanced courses, high school graduation rates, completion of high school diploma pathways that prepare students for both college and careers, and college enrollment. The pandemic is widening the gaps in our society and in our education system. We're especially concerned about the students who are graduating high school this spring. These students are about to go through one of the most important and difficult transitions. The class of 2020 represents the future of New York, and today we are calling on state leaders to fulfill an Excelsior Promise to each of these students. Before we get started, I'd like to go over some logistics. I'm going to start by walking through the components of the Excelsior Promise recommendations, and then you'll hear from educational equity leaders from across the state. All participants will be placed on mute during the presentation. If you have a question, please post it using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, and we'll address as many as possible after the speakers. If you experience any technical difficulties, please email Tiffany Lankus at TLANKES@edtrustny.org. And as always, we're happy to take any follow-up questions after the event. School and district leaders, teachers, and other school personnel are working incredibly hard in these challenging times, from addressing critical food access and other basic needs for students to distributing technology so more students can participate in distance learning. The Excelsior Promise was developed with the idea that New York State's graduating seniors require a government-wide commitment to ensure that they are supported in making the transition from high school to college and the workforce, something that for too many students was a challenge even before the pandemic. The Excelsior Promise focuses on commitments that can be made from the state, from local school districts, and from higher education, and includes specific recommendations for all. We'll highlight today just a few of these proposals. First, commitments from the state. We recommend that the state issue guidance to create consistent statewide expectations for how high school seniors will be supported for the remainder of this school year. In doing so, the state should hold high schools accountable for providing specific outreach, resources, and support to students who cannot participate in distance learning, students from low-income backgrounds, students of color, students with disabilities, English language learners or multilingual learners, and students experiencing homelessness. We recommend that the state also commit to publicly release annual to and through data on the post-secondary pathways of high school seniors, including college matriculation, persistence, and completion, in order to determine how this year and future graduates are faring compared to their peers. The state should use this data to identify additional interventions for students still in high school and to provide more support at the college level if needed. Next, commitments from school districts. With the support of school counselors and other school personnel, we recommend that school districts help all students develop a transition plan that identifies the student's aspirations, post-secondary path, and the resources the high school and school district will provide the student to assist in their transition during these unique circumstances. To help more students reach college, school districts should support all eligible seniors and their families in completing financial aid applications, including the free application for federal student aid known as the FAFSA, along with TAP, New York State DREAM Act, and Excelsior Scholarship financial aid applications. All high schools should be expected to conduct regular and ongoing outreach to all seniors who have not yet completed the FAFSA. In addition, high schools should support students in appealing their college financial aid awards if they've experienced increased financial insecurity as a result of the pandemic. We recommend that all districts also offer virtual office hours to support seniors with post-secondary transition planning, which should include both online and telephone options. This support should be offered for students and families in multiple languages with interpretation and translation services when needed. And third, commitments from higher education. We recommend that colleges and universities use federal relief or stimulus CARES Act and potential future federal relief funding to enroll all incoming first-year students from low-income backgrounds and first-generation college students in summer bridge programs that can provide either virtual or in-person on-campus support to students to help them transition successfully by addressing both their academic and their non-academic needs. We also know that some first-year college students may not be as academically prepared as they need to be because of this year's school closures. Colleges and universities should also commit that to the greatest extent possible, incoming first-year students will not be placed in traditional remediation, which has a low rate of student success, and instead that they'll have the opportunity to enroll in co-requisite credit-bearing courses that provide innovative and supported alternatives to remediation when necessary. Colleges and universities should also invest CARES Act and future federal relief funding in evidence-based programs like CUNY's ASAP program and similar programs at SUNY, as well as statewide educational opportunity programs, to acknowledge that next year's incoming first-year students will be an especially vulnerable population. As part of that recognition, colleges and universities should also expand on-campus food support, childcare, counseling services, and emergency grants that recognize the immense financial insecurity that many students will be under as they begin their college experience. We believe this framework will support high school graduates transitioning to college and the workforce during these trying times. As I mentioned, one of the most important ways to help students make it to college is to address the financial barriers. Along with this framework, today we are also releasing a new resource designed to aid students in completing the FAFSA, the key financial aid application for many students while schools are closed. Completing the FAFSA is the path to college financial aid eligibility for many high school students, and students who complete the FAFSA are far more likely than their peers to attend college immediately after graduating from high school. So far this year, FAFSA completion is down nearly 2.4 percentage points from the same period last year across New York State. Even more troubling, FAFSA completion rates are about 20% higher in the high schools that serve the fewest students from low-income backgrounds compared to the schools that serve the greatest share of students from low-income backgrounds, where obviously financial need is also much greater. Our new one-page toolkit available in English and Spanish is intended to remind high school seniors to complete the FAFSA and give them some quick steps to get started with the process. EdTrust-New York has also relaunched its online FAFSA completion tracker to provide educators, administrators, and the public with up-to-date information on local and statewide FAFSA completion rates and leading high schools. Now, I'd like to invite a few of our partners from across the state to share how high school seniors in their own communities are being affected by the pandemic and how these proposals could help them have a successful transition. It's an honor to welcome Dr. Edwin Quezada, who is the superintendent of Yonkers Public Schools, to join us and provide some remarks.
Thank you, Ian, and thank you to EdTrust for taking the time to bring to the forefront issues of significant importance, not only to New York, but to the entire United States of America. I have to tell you that in Yonkers, we have 8 high schools, and I would want everyone in New York State to practice the way we practice in our high schools. And I want to share with you that in Yonkers, the high school experience is a 4-year relationship between the student, the family, and the senior. And it is a real relationship, I must tell you. The high school principals lead the effort, and they form a system of support that includes the principal, the assistant principal, teacher leaders, and counselors. In the case of some of my schools, it also includes a safety officer. This team works with the student for 4 years, forming a strong bond that holds our students together. It is this bond that allows our seniors to keep succeeding during this pandemic and helping with a transition plan. And what does it look like here in Yonkers for our seniors? First of all, we are having weekly senior Zoom meetings with principals, senior assistant principal, teachers, and counselors. We do daily social media posts of students and college acceptances. Counselors meet with the students and families to discuss acceptances and financial aid packet. We created an FAQ specific to the graduating class. We do senior week activities. We have multiple celebrations. We are continuing with Gear Up and Smart Scholars activities. We have had parent senior meeting. We also schedule panel discussion with alumni. We have offered college readiness workshops. We do daily check-ins with students at risk. We have transition support meetings with post-secondary partners for students and families. And students also participate in orientations and online admissions counseling and testing. The goal is to empower our students to be the decision makers. Because of this work, our students have accumulated over $115 million in scholarship dollars for this year. And for an urban community, we have a significant number of special needs and undocumented students. But yet, over 60% of our students have already completed the FAFSA application. The district also works very closely with an outside foundation, Yonkers Partners in Education. This organization is relentless at supporting underserved students and making college graduation not a dream, but an aspiration that everyone should achieve. The Yonkers Public School on-time graduation rate for last year was 88%. This year, the goal was 90%. We are a data-driven organization, and it is because of that we are ensuring that the color of the skin of a student or the zip code or the financial status are not factors determining success. The Excelsior Promise is a recipe for long-term success for our students. For me, you are offering a clear roadmap that allows school districts to create an ongoing plan of action where a coalition among the state, school districts, and higher education is formed with a clear goal in mind: persistence and success in college. The class of 2020 is a resilient class, but there is no doubt that COVID-19 has marked our students for years to come. It is our responsibility to ensure that the challenges faced because of COVID-19 do not interfere with the goals, dreams, and aspirations of our students. As a state, we must be goal-oriented, ready to address the unique needs of the students in the class of 2020, collect data, create systems of support, support the families, provide academic and social emotional support once they enter college, and most important, we must create conditions for the students to form meaningful relationships once they enter college. That's what we have done here in Yonkers, and as a result, we expect that the class of 2020 will be successful and they will graduate from college and obtain all of the successes that I firmly believe that they are entitled to. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you, Dr. Quezada. Our next speaker will be Sam Radford, who is the past president of the District Parent Coordinating Council of Buffalo and co-chairperson of We the Parents. Thank you, Sam.
Parent voice to be part of this conversation. you know, this COVID-19 is one of the biggest challenges we've ever faced as a school community. And a government-wide commitment is exactly what is going to be needed to meet this challenge. High school students here in Buffalo are really affected by this pandemic, and they're affected across the whole spectrum. You know, we see, you know, when we listening to students, we seeing students who, you know, are dealing with the reality of being poor, the reality of, you know, not having all the resources they need to connect with the system and trying to, you know, keep up, and to the opposite extreme where students feel like they're, you know, are getting too much work and they're getting work more than they would have got if they were in school. So what we found in this Excelsior Promise is exactly what parents wanted to hear. This promise actually meets the needs of the voices of parents that we've been listening to. Parents of college-bound seniors have really big concerns. As a matter of fact, when the EdTrust parent survey came out, and they talked about 71% of the African-American parents and 72% of the parents of low-income students, as well as 66% of the parents of students of high needs, had a concern about their children not being prepared and falling behind academically. That is exactly what we were hearing. That's exactly what we found from the parents we were interacting with. And so this Excelsior Promise begins to address what their exact concerns are. So, you know, the parts I think that are most helpful to the parents in Buffalo is the fact that, first of all, there's 13 different parts of this framework, and there's 3 levels of commitment. That means is really comprehensive, and it deals with every level in which the parents had concerns on. I think what stands out the most is that the fact that we are asking the state to set clear expectations on how school districts should meet the high school seniors' needs right now. And those clear expectations represent the things that, you know, particularly the parents of low-income students and parents of color are concerned about. And the fact that you are calling on the communication with all students and families. And it's because those students who fall through the cracks is really where our concern is at, and this Excelsior Promise addresses that. And asking the district to help students transition to college and careers, as well as provide personalized support to supports and families, is exactly the things that parents have been calling for. So this promise actually, you know, points to a solution for what parents are most concerned about. And actually, when it goes on to, in terms of higher education, call on them to improve on communication with incoming students and put together the summer bridge programs for the incoming first-year students, especially those first-generation college students. That may be the difference maker. So this Excelsior Promise really is potentially a game changer and could make the difference for closing that gap that we see that has been increased by what we have seen going on in COVID-19. So we are encouraging our state leaders, our local leaders, to support this Excelsior Promise and ensure that every child, no child is left behind based on this challenge that we have with the pandemic. So thank you again, and we as parents are in total support of this Excelsior Promise.
Thank you so much, Sam. It's a privilege to introduce our next speaker as well, Angelica Perez Delgado, who's the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Ibero-American Action League.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, EdTrust, for taking this great initiative and this advocacy during this unprecedented times. You know, Ibero fully supports the commitments. It provides a clear guideline to the state, the school districts, and higher education. This pandemic has placed these disparities at the forefront. And this is a great place to start to fulfill the promise to our students. Here in the Rochester City School District, we know that our English language learners are lagging behind in comparison to many other students. Graduation rates at 23%. And we know that in this graduation year, we were able to make some strides and have some higher graduation rates. And it's really unfortunate that these students are facing this pandemic and this state of unknown. So for us, you know, we're proud to have provided 91 scholarships to local Latino students, and we're fully committed to supporting the commitments and ensuring that those students make it to college come September. So we are thankful for the advocacy, we're thankful for the work, and we feel this is a great beginning for addressing the needs of our students. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Judith Lorimer, who is the Director of Degrees NYC. Judith?
Thanks so much, Ian. We're very proud to be here, and along with other panelists, really support the Excelsior Promise. Degrees NYC is a network of 57 organizations in New York City that have come together over the past 4 years to seek equity in educational pipelines, particularly on the ways to and through college. Our organizations are nonprofits and community-based organizations, as well as some institutional partners in higher ed and at the Department of Ed and in government. So at this time, in the face of this crisis, in the face of COVID-19, it is absolutely critical that we attend to our young people, to their education and their future. There has, even though it seems somewhat counterintuitive, there has never been a more important time to support the education and ensure that our young people are succeeding. As we know, education is one of the critical ways to address the societal inequities that have caused COVID to fall so disproportionately heavy on communities of color and low-income communities. So especially at a time like this, moving toward the Excelsior Promise has never been more important, and we can't put it off because of budget constraints. So within the degrees community and in support of this agenda, there are several things that we've been hearing from our high school seniors and high school students. The first is that mental health is a real huge issue. In this time of uncertainty, when young people don't know what the future will bring, that the services and supports that are offered to every young person around mental health is critical. And it can't just be providing access, it has to be in the way that EdTrust has framed it, a push-in service, something where someone is reaching out to students and families to talk about and help address mental health needs. The second piece there is around basic needs. So we know a lot of our families are struggling to get food, and family members as well as young people are losing jobs. Students can't study and they can't learn if their basic needs aren't met. So it's critically important that we ensure through institutions and community-based solutions that families and students are getting enough to eat. Finally, what happens this summer is really on our students' minds, the uncertainty with with jobs, with camps, with activities. The proposal that EdTrust makes that schools should be in proactive outreach and touch with students throughout the summer is really critical. Usually there's a summer melt on the way to college, but in the face of COVID, we're afraid that it will be a tremendous melt. The other pieces that we've been talking about have to do with educational needs. We feel very strongly that no child should pay a penalty for COVID. And that means that when looking at grading, they should have an option to be pass-fail and not have the virus affect what their grades are. That there's still so many young people that don't have access to technology and or are not able to use it for one reason or another. And that for the rest of the school year and throughout the summer, for them to be connected is critical to make sure that the services that are being provided are working. And finally, there's a lot of talk about cutting supports around college access services, and that in support of EdTrust's agenda just can't be. We have to increase the amount of contact that we're having with young people right now and over the summer, not decrease it. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. And for our final speaker, we're honored to be joined by Nana Fofana, who is a high school senior. Nana, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. As a senior, some challenges I've faced during this period of school closure is grasping the idea that my senior year has been swiftly robbed at the palm of my hands, the structure of learning and academic teaching that have vanished within a blink of an eye, technical strands and difficulties such as limitations in feedback and disconnection with no engagement or interactions. And the biggest challenge has been becoming used to isolation, where our society is living through a word that is frequently used, quarantine. For as I prepare for college this fall, some recent changes will become a barrier for me. For example, this fall I'll be attending Hunter College as a biological science major, and communication has become shortened, so I'm having a hard time getting in touch with advisors and counselors for preparation of what's in store for me. But I believe there's additional supports that will be most helpful to students in my position and people who are beginning college. So for example, make sure when you enter your college, something captures your eye. For example, organizations or clubs that you want to attend or information you want to find more about. If not, that's probably not the college for you or the school for you. There's help and sources out there that can be a helping hand and an additional aid in your life. Always ask for help, even if it's not needed at the moment, because maybe one day you'll need that assistance and you'll know where to go or what to do. With life in college comes juggling responsibilities all at once, whether it's internships, extracurricular activities, work, social life, and many more. It's important to give yourself time, which is just rebuilding yourself. If anything comes too much at that point. Your financial situation, always think about that. What route is beneficial for you? Have a plan or a layout of what's going to be invested, or what best works for you. For example, books, dorms, food, or transportation, or any self-investments. For example, books, a lot of college students or students don't have enough fee or financial support to pay for books because some books cost around 150 and plus. So there's sites like eBay that you can actually buy books for a lower price for like $50. So you always want to budget your money just in case of any crisis or any financial problems. And lastly, I want everybody to understand, to accept that during college or even as now, you may endure challenges, hiccups, and losses, but that's all right. As long as you pick yourself up and keep trying, that's your biggest win. And a quote I always kept with me is, do not fear failure, but please be terrified of your biggest win. Do not fear failure, but please be terrified of regret. And that quote is by Jonathan Lee Iverson. And the reason why I believe that saying holds so much value is because in life we face mistakes and failures, but we shouldn't believe we are failures because it will become a self-fulfilling prophecy which prohibits us from progressing. Regret is never exploring any means of achieving anything. Success can be arrived at after failure, but regret never leads to the creation of anything or even the potential for success. So don't fear failure, which is taking a risk, but please be terrified of failure, which is accepting your limitations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nana, and thank you to each of our panelists. We'll pause for a moment now and invite questions. You can enter your question in the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen. And of course, as I mentioned, we'll also be available afterwards to answer any follow-up questions as well. So we'll just pause for a moment here. We have a question for Angelica about the cuts in funding bilingual education from the Rochester City School District and what will be done to help get multilingual learners up to speed. Angelica?
Thank you. You know, in 1972, a group of individuals led a lawsuit against the Rochester City School District for not meeting the needs of bilingual students. Is really the only one, I think, outside of Miami, the only settlement made in the Supreme Court outside of Miami for bilingual education. It establishes the Bilingual Education Council as an legal entity for the advocacy and the collaboration for bilingual education. We are currently reviewing with legal and in partnership with the Bilingual Education Council if there is a violation to the 1972 settlement. And we are in communication with the district to review that. So that's one of the ways that Ibero is helping the Bilingual Education Council support advocacy with these changes that were currently made. We know that there were changes made to the bilingual department. We know that 18.5 FTEs of bilingual teachers were removed. So that's something that we are very concerned about. How are we trying to bring kids up to speed? We're working closely with the bilingual education department at the district, using some of our family services assistants to make sure that kids are accessing virtual education and that their needs are being met, but it has been a challenge during the pandemic.
Thank you. Another question that's come in, I'll start an answer and then open it up to everyone on the panel to join as well. What are the main resources graduating seniors need right now? And a few come to mind from this work for us. One, they certainly need academic resources and instructional continuity alongside social emotional support during an extremely difficult period in their lives. Second, they need direct transition assistance, figuring out what their plans are post-graduation and how to connect to those plans. So that includes not only whether they'll go to college, but choosing the right college for them and accessing all of the financial aid to help make it possible. And third, communication with families, particularly communication in multiple languages and in multiple ways so that families are up to speed on all of the resources, not only that the school provides, but that the community provides during what are enormously difficult financial times for many families. And finally, I would just note one of the findings from our poll of public school parents conducted now almost 2 months ago at the beginning of the pandemic school closures. We asked parents of public school students what was most important to them, what needs they had. And one of the things that came through the clearest was relationships. So 95% of parents said that having regular contact with their child's teachers was important. Only 52% said that it was currently happening. 90% of parents said that having regular contact with their child's school counselor was important. 38% at the time said that that was important. We know that relationships are at the heart of teaching and learning and at the heart of student success. And in a time when many of us are communicating this way, it's important to continue to keep that top of mind. And let me open it up and invite other panelists to answer that question.
Ian, I like to follow after you and in addition to the recommendations that you are making, there are a number of things that need to happen this summer for our seniors so that we can guarantee that they will enter college and that they will persist in college. And the first one will be, we need to give our seniors a job. You know, the month of July and the month of August are perfect opportunities for our seniors to work. We all know that our young people in urban community, they are facing significant financial challenges. So why don't we, as the state, create conditions for our seniors to have a job and a job that allows them to communicate with another adult that can help them through the college process. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is that the school districts need to be available during July and August. We can just not close our doors and say, you graduated, the year is over, you don't need to come back. No, we need to be available for them so that we can help them transition to college by having conversations with the college advisors by calling the dean if it's needed, by applying to a different institution if our students, because of COVID-19, are not ready to go away. But what we cannot allow is for a student not to enter college if that student was ready to enter college in September. And you know that there is a possibility that some of our young people may choose not to go away. Well, remember, our young people will forget that they need to apply to a different institution so that they can enter college in September. The third thing I would share with you is that we really need to hold the post-secondary institutions accountable. They need to realize that our young people in urban community cannot go to college and enter a bunch and begin to take a series of remedial classes. Okay, let us not do that to our young people, because that will guarantee that they will not graduate in 4 or 2 years. Instead, let us accelerate academic, let us provide transitional academic programs for each and every one of our students so that when they enter classes in September, they are ready to take on the regular classes that they are supposed to take. We have excellent partnerships with some of the private colleges here in Yonkers, where we are requiring that they provide transitional programs for our students so that we can guarantee success.
And if I could also add to that, I think the most critical thing right now is individualized personal plan for every student. Right now, the real concern is those students who were on the verge of making it or not going to college or graduating. Those students, we are in the most vulnerable position right now. And if we don't reach out and make sure we have a clear safety net that goes through and walks that college, that student through, we're going to lose them right now. And so the attention, to give personalized attention, to know that every student has a plan, that we know what that plan is, that they got the support they need, and that this COVID-19 does not become the thing that caused their life to go the opposite direction when they could have, went, on further to better things in life.
Ian, I just want to add, I agree 100% with what everybody has said. The only piece I would add is also just making sure those basic emergency support grants are there over the summer and as students are entering college, because as you mentioned, and we know, many students may have a lot of financial barriers in terms of enrolling and then staying enrolled.
I would also like to add, as a senior at Hostos Lincoln Academy of Science and as a future graduate from Hostos Community College, I just wish that there can be a structure or a foundation where students can feel like they can go to you at any time and have a voice of what struggle or problem they have, because sometimes we feel left out and sometimes we feel like no one can relate to us. So building something that like a safe haven that every student feel like they can come to you or come to anyone and just express what's going on.
Thank you. And I think that's a great place to end today's conversation. Thank you again to all of the panelists and to all of the participants for joining us for this important discussion about the future of this year's high school seniors in the midst of the pandemic, and how to put educational equity first in ensuring that they have the support they need to succeed in the future. Again, we'd be happy to answer any follow-up questions following this event. Thank you so much.